Well, thank you, Stephanie. It's great to see so many familiar faces and also so many new faces. Look, we were just discussing before the call, but, we find ourselves in unprecedented, uncertain, and challenging times. And, most importantly, we hope that you and your loved ones are staying safe. Our thoughts remain with you all. While there's much that we do not yet know, we do know this. Our team at EB Research Partnership will not stop moving ahead to fund vital life-saving treatments, advance our innovative model, and lead our mission to cure EB. For a decade, EB Research Partnership's work has been laser focused on supporting the courageous researchers, doctors, healthcare professionals, and families battling EB every day. Their reliance on EBRP in our work inspires us to work harder than ever. We hope that COVID-19 treatments and vaccines will be available as soon as possible. However, the progression of EB cannot be stopped during these trying times. Patients, families, and researchers need us now more than ever. Our commitment and responsibility to fund their work is more important now than ever. Our dedication to the EB community and our supporters has never been stronger. Our culture at EBRP is to adapt and innovate in the face of adversity. Founded in 2010 by a dedicated group of parents, the Silver and Fulmer families, and Jill and Ed Vetter of Pearl Jam, EBRP is the largest global nonprofit dedicated to accelerating treatments and cures for EB. Since then, we've raised over $40 million to fund 75 research projects in more than a dozen countries. Last year was a record year as we supported $5.5 million for 21 research projects in 6 countries across the globe. Our funding of research and treatments is not only moving ahead, it is in fact growing. We just approved $4.8 million in research awards to 11 projects across the globe for our first grant cycle of 2020. Our July grant cycle will continue to be open to source the most brilliant and promising work from the global medical community, sharing our goal to treat and cure EB as quickly as possible. We are actively engaged with the medical community to ensure we are doing everything possible to keep research projects and clinical trials moving forward. EBRP is committed to innovation. In partnership with Amazon, building a first-of-its-kind data platform to bring together researchers, clinicians, and patients. Our EB Clinical Research Consortium uniting the 20 leading EB hospitals of excellence to work together to put speed into research and discovery. And our pioneering venture philanthropy model that enables every piece of research we fund to have the added upside of generating additional revenue to go right back into funding more research until a cure is found. We've worked with the world's leading doctors and scientists over the past 10 years to drive meaningful progress and have built the infrastructure, roadmap of projects to fund, and team to execute this very important task. When we started in 2010, there were only 2 clinical trials for EB. Now there are more than 25, including 13 that EBRP has had a direct role in. With the right resources, a meaningful treatment or cure will occur in the near future. While there will be difficult times ahead, we know that we will get through this together. It's our hope that it will bring out the best in all of us, just as our mission has always done. Our EB families show us on a daily basis what courage, grit, and perseverance looks like, and we look to them as our inspiration as we forge ahead. With you standing beside us, nothing will stop us in our mission to cure EB. So thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce you to the Phoenix Tissue Repair leadership. EBRP, then the Jackson Gabriel Silver Foundation, was proud to be an early supporter of this work. In fact, it was our first research project funded, then at USC, became Lotus Tissue Repair, and now Phoenix Tissue Repair. From Phoenix, we welcome Executive Chairman Sanuj Ravindran, MD, and Special Advisor Mark DeSouza, PhD, to discuss the ongoing phase 1/2 clinical trial of PTR-01, their protein therapy for the treatment of RDEB. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the stakeholders and constituencies and families whom are touched by this devastating disease. We are privileged to have this opportunity to speak to you about what we're doing at Phoenix and to share with you the current status of our program around developing a potentially leading therapeutic for dystrophic epidermolysis bullosa. I'm joined by Mark DeSouza, as you mentioned, who's a special advisor to the company, but more so, he's the original inspiration behind Phoenix around the use of developing collagen 7 as a potentially systemic therapy, and we'll get into that in a moment. But before that, I just wanted to say thank you, in addition to you, thank you to Stephanie for coordinating this webinar, and thank you to everybody who's taken the time to hear us today.
Thank you both. So if okay with you, we'll just jump right in. So why don't we start at the top, and if you can offer to the group just a little bit about who is Phoenix Tissue Repair as well as BridgeBio.
Sure, happy to do that. So Phoenix Tissue Repair is a company based in Boston that was founded in 2017 that's committed to developing recombinant collagen 7 as a first and best-in-class therapeutic for epidermolysis bullosa. It has a history that that precedes Phoenix, which Mark will get into in a moment. But Phoenix itself, as I said, is a 3-year-old company. We are also, you should know, an affiliate of BridgeBio. BridgeBio is our parent company, if you will. And that's a company that was founded about 5 years ago with the mission of developing and spawning companies that could address genetic diseases at their source. And so we are one of those companies, but we operate independently as well, and specifically focused on developing this therapeutic. The therapeutic that we're developing is something that we call internally as PTR01. This is an investigational therapy. It is, as I said, a recombinant form of collagen 7, which is the structural protein that is missing or defective, and it's the root cause of DEB. It's the protein that's required for the development of anchoring fibrils and for ultimate skin adhesion. And we believe as a company that if we are successful in replacing collagen 7 in patients with EB, that we can not only potentially address the skin manifestations and wound manifestations of the disease, but because we're administering the drug systemically, we have the potential to address the disease where it hits beyond the skin, across systemic mucosal surfaces and the eye as well. At this point in time, we are in the middle of a phase 1/2A study. We announced an update around that study a few weeks ago, and it continues forward through the end of this year into the final cohort that we're testing. So this is a study that is meant to first look at safety, the plausibility of the premise that we can deliver collagen 7 to the skin, and potentially start to see effects. Thus far, we've administered the drug to 3 different dose cohorts. We've looked at and commented on the data for those first 3 cohorts, and it's the 4th cohort that we just kicked off recently. 1 patient is thus far enrolled in that cohort, and as I mentioned, we hope to conclude that around the end of the year.
Thank you, Sanuj.
I think it's important, before we get into more specifics, that that we share a little bit about the history as well. And Mark played such an important role in that, and that's why he's such a critical part of the team. And I think many of you might be familiar with some of this history, at least in its prior iteration around the name Lotus Tissue Repair. So with that, let me hand it to Mark, and he can share a little bit more color around where this came from and why we're excited about it.
Great. Thanks, Sanuj. Hi, everybody. This is Mark DeSouza. Good to see lots of familiar faces and names on the webinar here. And I'm sort of back with Phoenix Tissue Repair after a few years running another company in the rare genetic skin disease space, also with BridgeBio. As some of you know, I founded Lotus Tissue Repair in 2010 with David Woodley and Mei Chen, who are both professors at USC. And their work was funded originally by the predecessor to EBRP. And it's nice to see Alex and Jamie there on the phone. And David and May, are David's a dermatologist and Mei Chen's a molecular biologist and biochemist, and they had 20 years of NIH-funded research that really went behind the technology that we licensed at Lotus Tissue Repair, doing a pretty obvious thing in some way, right? You're giving back what's missing. Now that's what protein replacement therapy is about. But the challenges were high. Can you make the protein in a commercially viable way? Can you give it with the right profile, in our case, intravenously? As you know, this is not just a skin disease, right? So can we give the protein intravenously, and will it get not just to the skin, but to the tongue and the esophagus and the anal mucosa, to the the eyelids, for example? And that was really the vision here, is to develop a systemic treatment. So when we founded Lotus in 2010 and got it financed in 2011, we really focused on these two key challenges. Can we make it in a commercially viable way? And we've done that. And we essentially do this in a cell called CHO, C-H-O. And what you can do is grow up these cells in bioreactors, essentially in tanks. And that allows you to scale up the drug supply. And then the second thing we showed Dr. Woodley and Dr. Chen's labs, as well as at other labs specializing in animal models with EB, that we could reverse the blistering phenotype, the way the skin looks. We could reverse that after intravenous administration of collagen 7. And we did that in a number of different mouse models, as well as in a dog with a golden retriever dog that had the disease. And just to give you one sort of remarkable fact that we saw, as you may know, the mouse that is deficient in collagen 7, what's called a knockout, it only survives about 3 days. And Dr. Chen showed that if you give intravenous collagen 7 to that mouse, it would survive for weeks. And this built on earlier work they had done with intradermal injections. And that work was reproduced by Shire, who acquired the company in 2013. And they then did a really fantastic job on the manufacturing side. Unfortunately, they moved at a far slower pace than we would have liked, and that was frustrating to me and the Lotus team. But when they formally put the program on hold in 2016, we wound up buying back the asset from Shire. And that's when BridgeBio came in and funded the company. And we were really thrilled to have our baby back, and continue the development.
Great, thank you, Mark. And does that have anything to do with the name of the company?
You might think so, right? Rising from the ashes and whatnot.
Well, look, and there's been some recent announcements and some recent developments at Phoenix, and just wanted to ask you and Sanuj if you can update us on some things that are new at Phoenix Tissue Repair.
Sure, happy to do that. I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but let me provide some more specifics. We put out a press release on May 13th of this year, providing an update as to the phase 1/2 study looking at PTR01. As I mentioned, this study was first focused on assessing the safety and tolerability of administering the drug intravenously. It was also meant to look at what we call the pharmacokinetics of the drug, the way the drug behaves and is available in the body, and then ultimately sort of the pharmacodynamics of what the drug does in the body. It's a short study. It's a study in which patients were on drug for no more than 10 weeks. And so that's really the limitation of what we're able to assess in this short time frame. As it pertains to looking at other longer term clinical effects, that is something that we hope to do in the next phase of the study, which I'll get to in a moment. But as it pertains to the current study, as of May 13th, we had evaluated 9 patients in the study and reported on those patients. And what we reported was that the drug is well tolerated. There have been no treatment-related serious adverse events at any dose. We saw what we call a dose-related response in the deposition of collagen 7. So with each increasing dose across the 3 cohorts, we saw even more collagen 7 deposited in the skin, which is the pattern that we would hope to see at this point in time, and to see that after just infusions over a short period of time was very encouraging for us. In terms of what's next, as I said, we started the 4th cohort. So the first patient in the 4th cohort was dosed in the first week of May. We plan to enroll 3 total patients in this cohort. And the hope is that we'll enroll those patients soon and be able to report on the findings in this higher cohort, which is 3 times the dose of the prior cohort at the end of the year as well, with the same aim of continuing to assess safety at the higher dose and tolerability. But again, with the hope that as we go to a higher dose, we see even more of a pharmacodynamic effect, which is suggestive of the proof of principle. And then the plan after that is to initiate an open label extension arm of the study, or what we're calling a phase 2 open label study. And what we plan to do there is to look at patients over a longer period of time, a 6-month period of time. And in that, we first plan to roll over patients who participated in the current study, and if possible, invite new patients into that study as well. It'll again be a small study with a limited number of patients, but looking at the effect over a longer duration. And the hope is that between the current study and that open label study, we will have the requisite data to then potentially inform a pivotal or registrational study, or otherwise known as a phase 3 study.
Thank you, Sanuj. And look, we have a lot of audience questions, but I'll just ask one more and then open it up to the questions from the community. But I think all of us on the line share a mission of wanting treatments and hopefully a cure as quickly as possible. We've made progress towards that goal. Even just 10 years ago to have 2 clinical trials, today more than 20, more than 10 times the amount that we did in the terms of medical research in a relatively short time, in a decade. But now we've got this landscape of clinical trials. What do you, and or Mark, feel is important for the EB community to know about really what's different about PTR01?
Yeah, well, in a nutshell, it's the fact that we are the only company that I'm aware of that is developing a therapeutic that can address the systemic manifestations of the disease. And Mark can expand on the importance of that. So I'll hand to Mark to talk a little further about that point of differentiation.
Yeah, the way I look at it is, you have sort of 2 classes of therapies out there, right? Those that are disease modifying, right? That can change the course of the disease. And that's what we're doing. And you have what are more sort of palliative care options, right? And then you have sort of 2 other ways to look at it. You have localized treatments like gene-corrected skin grafts or topical therapies. And you have systemic treatments, of which really we're the only ones in that category. There are some efforts with intravenous stem cells that have been done, but really at this point, it's from a clinical standpoint, Phoenix Tissue Repair has the most advanced systemic therapy that's also disease modifying. So it's our hope that we can get enough collagen 7 to all the areas that are deficient and restore sufficient amounts of it to have a meaningful impact, not just on wound healing, which all the topical therapies, the local therapies are aimed at, but to also address some of the systemic manifestations like corneal abrasions and esophageal dilation, or to reduce the frequency of those, to help with dysphagia, blistering of the oral and anal mucosa. So that's what we hope to get over the longer studies that Sanuj referred to. And that's really what differentiates us from some of the more palliative and localized treatments.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Sanuj. Probably the most important reason we do these webinars is really to engage the EB community and hear from the EB community directly. So at this time, I'd like to pass it back to Stephanie to take some questions from the EB community.
Thanks, Mike.
So the first question that I'm going to ask for you guys from the community is, can you share when this trial will extend to those 13 years and younger?
Yes, I can give some directional, guidance around that. We have to, per FDA, do what's known as a juvenile toxicology study, and so we're doing, in vivo work along those lines now. We expect to have that data available to us in the spring of next year. And it's not until we have that data that we're going to be able to enroll patients that are under the age of 16. So as of now, we're limited by that, but we're moving very quickly to get those studies completed so that we can expand the work that we're doing to those younger patients.
That's an animal study.
Correct. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, great. Another question that came up is that this person assumes that PTR has been affected by COVID. And so with that, do you think you can maintain your timelines, and what does that look like moving forward?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. And I would say that we're a little fortunate in terms of where we sort of fall in our stage of development. I work with a couple of other companies too, and this question comes up quite frequently. And in my experience, what I've observed is that while the industry you might be reading is broadly affected by COVID, clinical trials coming to a halt, what's affected more are studies that are just ramping up, that need to get approved at the hospital level, and that need to get newly enrolled. Since we have the benefit of having a study that was already midstream, where we'd already enrolled a number of subjects and we were in between cohorts, we benefited from that. We also benefited from the fact that one of the larger enrolling sites for our study happens to be open. A lot of sites are closed, but the site in particular that relates to our study is actually open. And so we were able to enroll a patient in the final cohort in May, and we think we'll continue to be able to enroll that. And I'm hearing that at least one of the other sites where we're conducting our study should also be opening very soon. And so we've been minimally affected, and some of that is just good luck. And so no, I think we're not delayed significantly in our study. Now, if there's a second wave and a resurgence, those types of things, those are risks to our program. But at this point, I think we're timeline-wise, in a good spot.
That's great to hear. And another question would be, will this work with RDEB nonsense mutations?
Yeah, I mean, the quick answer is yes, but Mark, you want to expand on that?
No, I think yeah, this works with any mutations in EB. I guess maybe related to this is at this point, we're only treating patients who have some collagen 7. We're not treating patients with null mutations or no collagen 7, but that will hopefully change in the future. But yeah, those with nonsense mutations absolutely can be included.
Okay, great. Thank you. And one last question. We talked a lot about the history of the therapy and it getting blocked for some time. Does that have anything to do with the safety of the product?
No.
Could you repeat the question, Stephanie?
So there's been some talk that because this has taken so long to get to this point, does that have anything to do with the product's safety?
No, thanks for asking that question. Anytime a product is developed and then there's a pause and a silence, it's natural that people might wonder why, and it's natural for people's thoughts to kind of move towards those more cautious reasons, and it's very fair. And obviously, as a company that's developing a therapeutic, there's nothing more important on our mind than the safety of a therapeutic that we're developing. We've spent a considerable amount of time assessing the safety of this drug, both preclinically and now in the clinic. One of the reasons we're proceeding so cautiously through the different cohorts, starting with a very small dose and inching our way up, is because anytime you're delivering a new protein, in this case it's a very large structural protein, one could theoretically have that concern. So the onus has been on us to prove that the drug is safe, and thus far, I'm happy to report that both preclinically in animals and now thus far through the first 9 patients, we're seeing really no significant signs of safety. So we feel very good about that, and we'll continue to keep a very strong eye on safety above all else.
Thank you so much. I'm sure everyone on the call is very happy to hear such positive news coming out of you guys and that reassurance. So that was all the time we have for questions at this point. I'm going to move forward with introducing Robin, but anyone I see a lot of questions popping up in the chat, we'll make sure to get those to the Phoenix team and respond to you guys. So don't worry about not getting those questions answered. So I'm going to introduce, thanks guys. I'm going to introduce Robin Newman. Robin is a social work clinician with Stanford Children's Hospital and Clinics, a tertiary level hospital on the Stanford University campus. She works in a variety of pediatric specialty care clinics, including the genetic skin, genetic metabolic, and high-risk infant clinics. She has worked in their EB clinic for over 15 years, supporting pediatric patients and their families as they navigate their care. We're very excited to have Robin with us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to her. I'm going to share the screen so that she can see her slides.
Thank you. So thank you, everybody. I'm very honored to be a part of this webinar today. And Stephanie did a great job in introducing me. She took the words out of my mouth. It really has been my honor to be working with the EB clinic at Stanford for a long time now. And I'm very excited that the EBRP and Phoenix Tissue Repair have invited me today to really offer support and whatever else I can give in terms of tools to the EB community, and especially in this profoundly uncertain time that we are in right now. And today I plan on sharing some thoughts and ideas that might help you cope during this unprecedented time, especially while managing a chronic condition. And I really would like to acknowledge everyone on this call and in the larger EB community including EBRP and Phoenix Tissue and all the Bridge Bio community or agencies that are helping push forward the research that's being done and trying everything they can. You guys really are warriors and heroes, so I want to definitely appreciate you for that. Okay, so today I think we're going to just boil it down to, there's so many things to talk about, but I think that especially during this time, we can focus primarily on ways to cope using evidence-based suggestions from research and coping experts. And you all might have some of your own experiences with some of what I'm going to discuss, but if you have comments or questions while I'm talking, I welcome you to write them in the chat. I know that Stephanie got a few of those questions ahead of when this webinar occurs, so I'm happy to try and address as many of those as I can. But also questions help each of us learn from the other about what's on our minds, so that's good. So what are we going to cover today? I'm going to share some information and best practices that have been shown to reduce stress and increase resilience. So as we all know, this is a very challenging time. My son's teacher likened it to being thrown in the waves of the bonsai pipeline and never having surfed before. And some of us have been sort of naturally good at surfing and stood up on the first try. And some of us have been tossed in the waves and others somewhere in the middle. But the good news is that most people are getting through this. In my job, I hear this a lot, that it's been a very emotionally stressful time for people. And it might help to look more closely at what some of these stressors are. Everyone is, of course, worried about contracting the COVID virus, feeling the weight of confusion and uncertainty in this time, and also even grief or sadness about the loss of routine and normalcy in our lives. We might feel as though we are not in control of our daily lives, and it's hard to know what is safe, what to expect, and when will things get back to normal. Some families I'm talking with share that they are experiencing a strong number of emotions such as fear, anxiety, grief, sadness, confusion, and uncertainty. And these feelings that we're having now can trigger old stressors that maybe you've experienced in the past, and they can elicit a physical response in our body. Everyone experiences stressors differently, but these thoughts and feelings are normal, and especially when facing stressful situations like this. And you might be familiar with the description fight or flight mode, and this really is kind of how we are right now. This is our mind and body's way of responding to stressors, whether they are virtual or real. So fear and anxiety. The current novel virus outbreak has led to a lot of uncertainty and questions, especially from adults and families with children who have a medical condition like EB. And we can address and reduce these fears by seeking information from our resources. And both EBRP and DEBRA websites have some good information on COVID-19, what it is, the impact on EB, and some recommendations. And I've written the links here on the slide and also at the resource page, which I have at the end of this presentation, so you can come back to it and copy the links and visit the website. I also would really recommend that you reach out to your medical team and partner with them to learn more about how to keep yourself or your loved ones healthy during this time. And while we're on the subject of fear and anxiety, I just want to touch upon a little bit about signs of anxiety in children and teens. That this can apply to really all of us. Typically, behaviors that might be seen indicate sort of a temporary and what's going on now, responsive but adaptive coping. Younger kids may exhibit regressive behaviors, restlessness, hyperactivity, temper tantrums, nightmares, sort of clingy behavior, or difficulty being apart from their parents. And older kids might have difficulty concentrating or sleeping. They might be quick to anger. They might also be restless or hyperactive. And some kids might actually manifest the anxiety in the form of physical complaints, such as headache or stomach ache. So the best thing we can do, whether it's to another adult or to our children, is really offer support by listening and maybe offering simple information about the pandemic, your child's health, in a developmentally appropriate way. That's usually the best approach. In a recent article in the Harvard Business Review, David Kessler, whom you might have heard of, he's a world-renowned grief expert. He had actually worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who's the sort of the founding mother of the stages of grief. She's developed those, and he was interviewed for this article, and he described how some of us might be feeling right now. And he said, we feel the world has changed, and it has. We know that this is temporary, but it doesn't feel that way, and we realize things will be different. And just as going to the airport is forever different from how it was before 9/11, things will change, and this is the point at which they've changed. The loss of normalcy, the fear of economic toll, loss of connection. This is hitting us, and we are grieving collectively. We are not used to sharing to this kind of collective grief in the air. Mr. Kessler goes on to share that we're all grieving a loss of safety, and that this grief is experienced in stages. And we will each go through these stages of grief in our own way. Our minds can be running images and feelings just to process this grief. And really the goal is not to ignore these feelings or make them go away. Our goal is to find balance in what we think and to come out of this time in a good or better place. So in the face of a global pandemic caused by a new virus that we don't fully understand, there's really a lot out of our control, from the actions of our neighbors to the timing of a vaccine. And so alongside the grief and anxiety, we might be feeling the loss of what we had in the past and fear for the future. There is another big emotion that's around, and that is helplessness. And the question is, how can we cope with this uncertainty permeating our lives right now? The secret is to focus on what's happening right now, right in front of you. If you can do that, studies suggest that you'll be better equipped to solve problems that you face and to accept situations that you can't change. And the other way to combat these feelings is to both connect with others and reduce our stress. So what are some of those practical applications to reduce stress? Reducing stress can be achieved through the practice of mental and physical exercises such as deep breathing, mindfulness, and meditation. And the more you practice these activities, the easier it is to do them. And these activities are also really accessible right now for anyone. Even if you've never done any of these before, it's really a great time to start. So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is a purposefully and objectively focusing on the present moment. And studies suggest that mindfulness affects many aspects of our psychological well-being, improving our mood and increasing positive emotions and decreasing our anxiety or emotional reactivity. And some activities include mindfulness walks to help us focus on the present, gratitude journaling, or expressive writing. And these all offer ways to identify the good things in our life and can have some really positive effects on our well-being. Deep breathing is another option, and paced or deep breathing involves consciously inhaling and exhaling according to a set rhythm. And it helps us to calm our body and our mind by focusing on our breath, and can have some positive effects. And a recent study in the Journal of Neurophysiology showed that several brain regions linked to emotion, attention, and body awareness are activated when we pay attention to our breath. And I have some links at the end of this presentation on how to find information about how to do this, which you can do right in your own home. Meditation is another form of mindfulness. It's been shown to help decrease stress, increase focus, and help us sleep better. And there are a number of meditation styles and types of practice. And you can find a lot of apps and YouTube videos that will help you start. Basically, it is the practice of being present and sitting still and quieting your mind. And one meditative practice is sound healing with Tibetan bowls, which if you've ever heard them, it's a very calming, relaxing sound. And I often click on a YouTube video of Tibetan bowls while I'm trying to do work. And it really does help me concentrate and feel calm and focus. Another meditative practice is expressive writing. It helps us gain new insights on anything that's challenging or of concern for us. And it really just involves free writing for about 20 minutes on a particular issue that you find important. And you can really explore your thoughts around it. And the good news is no one has to see it, and you just get something down on paper, and it can trigger some ideas about how to address the issue. So in this time, these are all practices that can move you from a place of stress to a place of coping. And out of that coping comes increased resilience. And psychological resilience really represents a process of adapting well in the face of adversity. And I just want to point out that this is really a time that we can use, since we have to shelter in place and sort of isolate ourselves, we can use this time as a gift or an opportunity to enhance our coping and build resilience and learn new skills. And these really are skills that will last a lifetime. So use this time as a gift. So one of the ways that we can reduce stress is through social connection. And the question is, how can we do this while we're supposed to be social distancing? I'd like to point out that social distancing does not mean social isolation. And in fact, social support is extremely important to our mental and physical health. And social isolation and low levels of social support have been shown to be associated with increased morbidity and mortality, especially with regard to an illness. And higher levels of social support appear to buffer or protect against the full impact of mental and physical illnesses. So this is an important thing to keep in mind as we navigate this time. There are a number of ways we can socially connect. They offer us an opportunity to create purpose and meaning out of this time. And I've got a couple of different ideas here. The first one would be to seek involvement in conversation. There are a number of virtual organizations like the Grand, Mon Ami, and Circle that offer an opportunity to connect virtually with diverse groups of people for conversation and companionship. And another idea would be just to talk to the people in your neighborhood. All of this, of course, is virtually. There are social networks such as Nextdoor and Facebook and Google Groups. Of course, we might have already been using, but especially during this time, will really help us to stay connected with people who are local to us. And you can offer and receive help through these websites. And another thing that's often very appealing at this time is to join a mutual aid group in your city or county or state. One of the best ways to address anxiety really is to find a way to transform it from, just sitting there being anxious to action. So during this pandemic, there have been a rise in these mutual aid groups that help volunteers create informal networks to support whatever they're interested in. Everything from, protesting and, talking about what's going on in the last few weeks to delivering groceries or medications to seniors or others who can't get out of their homes. And this link that I have here is a great web page of by state and nationally where you can connect to mutual aid organizations. So, and then to address connecting and disconnecting, of course, sheltering in place means a lot more family time than we may be used to. And part of building resilience is to look for the silver lining that adversity brings. One of these can be how we are connecting with members of our family. And during this time, we may be connecting with our families in different ways than we used to. And as a result, a different sense of family unity might be developed. And this really is an opportunity to take a look at how the family wants to do things differently now and maybe after this specific time has passed. So you should think about how you want to connect and perhaps make a plan with your family and figure out if you'd like to develop any new rituals, meet and agree on maybe some small changes or goals that you might have. And the other thing you want to do is think about how you want to disconnect. So things like limiting the news, TV, and social media really can help to reduce the amount of stress you and your family feel. And trying to engage with your family without the use of technology, which is tough, I know, at least for a short while each day, can really help, just finding low-tech ways of interacting. So coping for children during this time may really vary quite widely. And different ages have different coping styles and support needs. In general, it's beneficial to provide structure, especially for children, for each day. That means a specific time for school, recess, playtime, breaks, and then quiet and off time. And the idea is to get them to sort of work with you and integrate choice so they have an opportunity to gain some control over their day. It's also a good idea for them to be involved in that. And also giving children an opportunity to benefit from expressing their feelings. And depending on their age, you can ask open-ended questions to them, such as, what have you heard about COVID, or what worries you most about this time? And that really can help them describe how they're feeling. And the younger they are, the harder it might be to describe their feelings. So there might be some other ways for them to express their thoughts and feelings, such as something called a feelings sheet, which you can download off the internet, drawing, writing, acting, or just play. And the main thing is, as a parent, is to really empathize with their feelings, reassure them, try to make sure kids have a way of making things up to them and sort of blaming themselves for or being the cause of whatever is going on. And you just have to reassure them that that's not the case. And perhaps you can share some of your similar feelings that you might be having at this time, that as a way. So that also, while we want to take care of our children and our family, we also have to take care of ourselves. Our mental and physical health really depends on staying connected with our friends and family, but also caring for ourselves. So it really is that old saying of put your oxygen mask on first. If you're flying, you know that that's what they say. It does have some truth to it. You really need to check in with yourself about what's missing, maybe what needs attention, and what brings you joy. And also checking in with another adult can be very helpful. Talking with friends or someone that you respect, it can give you some good perspective. And just to point out that, as we do this for ourselves, this is a good way of role modeling for our children. Children pick up on their parents' anxiety very quickly, and they watch how their parents cope, and typically can take on whatever their parents are feeling in that moment. And so if they sense that you're anxious, they might be anxious as well. So take the time to model good self-care so that they can see this and maybe do the same. And, we all get to that point where we might find ourselves having a difficult moment. So step away to regroup and model good coping by maybe using some of the stress reduction strategies that I've just mentioned, or others like online yoga or exercise. And that connection that I was speaking about before really does nourish and support us through this time. So if you are having difficulty coping, you really can reach out to friends, family members, support groups, clergy, healthcare professionals, or therapists. And the main thing is that you really should practice self-compassion. It's really hard to do that. We kind of get involved in our own thoughts, and we may not realize that that you might not be much different than pretty much anyone else in how you're feeling. And we all are probably likely to get upset about these additional limitations that we've been asked to put on ourselves. And we all will need to offload tension, and we all will need to try and exercise control over our lives right now. And you just have to experiment and find what works for you. And the final thing I want to say is that, you know, yes, this is a challenging moment in time, but this is an opportunity to think about what can we take away from it. And creating small goals for ourselves in this time can make it an uncertain time more meaningful. Being compassionate and supportive is also important. But the takeaway is that this isn't just a time to survive, it is and can be a time to thrive and to be our best and to strengthen our reservoir of resilience that we have waiting inside of us. Again, I want to thank you all for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions or address any comments that you might have.
Thank you so much, Robin. So I will be putting these resources up and emailing them to you when we also, when we post the video onto YouTube. But we did get some questions for you, Robin, that I'd love to ask. So one of the first questions is that this family has noticed that their son's anxiety, itch, and sadness has increased during COVID. It's hard to understand how much is related to COVID and how much is related to his EB. So can you comment on how COVID impacts kids who have underlying rare conditions?
You know, I think it's easy to lump everything together, but and granted, the way I see it is that not only is someone with EB coping with that, they're also having to cope with COVID. And so, but at the same time, they're human and they are likely going to be responsive as a child or as an adult with any of the suggestions that I've described here. And I strongly recommend that if there's a way to start using some of these tools as a way to help cope, that might alleviate some of the difficulties. Of course, as with any person, if there is, if it's impacting your functioning or your mental health is really suffering, it is important to reach out to a professional, your social worker in your clinic, your physician, the nurses, anyone that might be able to direct you or support you further.
Great, thank you. And we had actually 2 questions come from parents who I guess their kids are getting ready to transition out of the house and go to college. So
Yes.
how can we help these teens develop an attitude that will help them survive the overwhelming responsibilities of self-care?
So this is actually an important aspect of care, as we work with our teenage patients and young adults, and as they are transitioning, that's one of the most important things to do, is start that transition of care while they're being treated in the years prior. And it's a tough thing for parents, because we all want to really make sure our kids are getting the best and doing the best, and it doesn't really matter what it's about, but definitely the care. We want to make sure our children are following the care plan as it should be, and that this time is tough for parents and for the college students that's about to head off, hopefully. I think the main thing is to start encouraging a student, a college student, or a college age person to take a gradually increasing level of responsibility, help them learn about everything, whereas we as parents would be doing a lot of the talking about ordering supplies, the insurance, who to contact in the clinic, and even the phone numbers of the clinic. We can't assume that our teenager knows about all of that. And so getting them involved in the care and asking them to take ownership and responsibility for it can really go a long way. And then also the other thing that I talk to families about is when they get to college, there are quite a number of support resources for students with special needs. And even though this is might only be a physical need that we have, we really need to connect with, usually these programs are called disabled students programs, or some such office like that on campus, and you really want to connect with those right away so that you get the support that you need in case you need to take time off from class to take care of yourself medically, physically, and that sort of thing. And so I would start there.
Great. And I know we're coming up on time, but I'm going to ask one last question live to Robin, and then we will make sure to get all the rest of the questions answered by email. So the last question would be, are there any particular therapists who you recommend, or how would you go about finding a therapist to help?
So, I got that question, and I think if I understood it correctly, I was thinking maybe if there's a type of therapist that would be better than another, and really any mental health professional can support you. I mean, yes, it would be nice to have somebody who's got a little bit of experience with chronic illness or illness in general, but at the same time, most mental health professionals should be capable of helping with specifics that you might be experiencing with your health condition or your mental health concerns. So definitely reach out. Of course, social workers in the clinic, if you have access to someone like that, the nurses in the clinic, these are all people that can offer support, and they also can refer you to people in your community.
Great, thanks so much, Robin. So before we sign off, I'm going to close the webinar first by thanking all of our presenters for your time and your knowledge. And we're all very grateful to have you here to help teach our community some new things. And secondly, thank you to everyone who joined today, for participating, for watching, and for asking your questions. EBRP is committed to advancing research to find treatments and a cure for EB. And we're so thankful to have all of your support. We all know now that the biggest barrier to curing EB is funding and not science. So please consider making a donation so we can further our work. You can also start your own virtual fundraiser as we're all figuring out these digital times. So if you're interested in getting more involved with EBRP, please follow us on social media. Our tag is @EBResearch on all of the platforms. And you can also learn more on our website, www.ebresearch.org. We have some exciting initiatives coming up. We're actually having our digital poker event, first ever online this year, coming up in July. So please stay up to date with us, and hopefully we can have more things like this and other fundraising initiatives to keep going and get our mission of a cure attained. So thank you all again, and have a great rest of your day.